Tonight, Russia declares war. Explosions across Ukraine in pre-dawn strikes. The latest live. $70 billion wiped off Australian shares as the crisis escalates. Petrol, gas and food prices under new pressure. Thousands of jobs on the line in a construction nightmare as ProBuild goes into administration. Hundreds of police operating illegally for years after an embarrassing bungle. An apology to former AFL coach Danny Laidley over the leaked photo scandal. And cricket greats rush to Rod Marsh's hospital bedside in a health emergency.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell starts now.
Good evening. Russia has declared war on Ukraine, launching attacks on military targets and telling foreign nations to stay out of the way or face the consequences. Ukrainian authorities claim that Kiev and multiple cities have been struck by missiles.
Minutes before dawn, eastern Ukraine's sky starts glowing. It was 6 a.m. in Moscow. Vladimir Putin addressing his nation to declare Russia's special military operation had begun.
I've decided to conduct a special military operation. It aims to protect people who have been bullied and subjected to genocide by the Kiev regime.
The rant unfolded for over an hour, timed in unison with explosions in eastern Ukraine. And inside the holy grail of Putin's ambitions, the Ukrainian capital, Kiev.
Oh, I tell you what, I just heard a big bang right here behind me. I thought we shouldn't have done the live shot here. There are big explosions taking place in Kiev right now.
We will strive to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine and will bring to justice those who committed multiple bloody crimes against civilians, including Russian citizens.
A state of emergency is tonight being enforced in Ukraine. Curfews, military and citizens on alert for a call up to war.
Here in Lviv, the air raid sirens have just sounded. A loudspeaker announcement also telling people to go home, to go into their basements and take cover, to turn off their electricity and gas, to gather their documents and await further instructions.
US intelligence reports say Russia has nearly 100% of its forces it needs to invade. Here's where tanks and troops are targeting first. On the east of Ukraine, two territories already held by Russian rebels, Donetsk and Luhansk. The invasion is creeping into Ukrainian-controlled areas, Russia declaring its key target tonight, the area of Donbass. It's 800 kilometres from the capital Kiev. Shelling and explosions have also been heard in Mariupol, Dnipro City and Kharkiv. Knowing a new war was brewing, Vladimir Putin earlier paid tribute to the past. In the rain, weathering international sanctions, he laid a wreath before sending soldiers to a modern-day front line. Cyber attacks were already targeting Ukraine before gunfire rang out, and a late UN meeting in New York turned into an all-nighter.
The beginning of a large-scale war in Ukraine will be the end of the world order as we know it.
America predicted it was when, not if, Ukraine's president was preparing for the worst.
If they try to take our country, our freedom, our lives, we will defend ourselves.
Now he'll have no choice.
And we have our reporters in Ukraine and Washington tonight. First to Jeff Parry in Lviv. And Jeff, please describe what's happening there right now.
Well, right now the air raid sirens are sounding again here in Lviv, but it's becoming clear as this day unfolds, Pete, that this is not just a small land grab by Vladimir Putin, it's a whole-scale invasion of Ukraine. Tanks, I'll update you a little bit on some of the latest military activity we're hearing. Tanks have crossed the Ukrainian-Belarus border, Russian tanks. That's about an hour north of Kiev. Cruise missiles have been targeting military headquarters and targets around Kiev. We know of a missile that's just struck an airport about 100 kilometres south of Lviv, where we are. But Ukraine is fighting back. The Ukraine Defence Ministry says that it has shot down 5 Russian jets and 1 helicopter. Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, addressed his countrymen a short time ago in which he appealed for calm. I'll just quote a little bit of him. He says, "The army is working, the whole security and defence sector is working. Don't panic, we are strong." But despite those calming words, long lines of traffic can be seen leaving Kiev, people lining up to get petrol. And we've heard that a lot of the roads across Ukraine are now clogged with traffic. West of here is the Polish border. The road out there, we're told, is at a standstill. Pete?
Jeff Parry in Lviv, thank you for that update. Now to US Bureau Chief Ashley Mullaney, who's in Washington, D.C. Ashley, how is America reacting?
Good evening, Peter. Well, the US president has vowed to hold Russia responsible for its attack on Ukraine. Moments after President Putin announced this military action, US President Joe Biden released a statement describing it as unprovoked and unjustified. He says President Putin has chosen a premeditated war that will bring catastrophic loss of life and human suffering. Warning of further consequences the United States and our allies and partners will impose on Russia. Exactly what those consequences are, we will learn tomorrow. Joe Biden plans to meet with G7 leaders and then address the nation at noon. He's made it clear that he will not be putting American troops on the ground in Ukraine, so this will likely be another tranche of sanctions. Now, Ukraine's President Zelensky has spoken to Joe Biden this evening. He also tried to speak to Vladimir Putin in a last-ditch attempt to have him call off the invasion, but his call to the Kremlin went unanswered. Zelensky tonight defiant as his nation comes under attack, the world holding its breath to see how far Putin will go. Peter?
Ashley Mullaney in Washington, D.C., thank you. And the conflict in Ukraine is already hitting home. The Australian stock market has plunged with $70 billion wiped away and petrol prices are at record highs. The Prime Minister has ruled out deploying troops but says more sanctions are on the way.
Having ruled out Australian boots on the ground, Scott Morrison fires back from the lip.
I'll call it what it is. The Russian government launched a brutal invasion, unprovoked, on Ukraine and should be condemned for doing so.
Having earlier met Governor-General David Hurley,
Morning, Your Excellency,
signing sanctions into law now that the invasion is on, going further, widening the sanctions to cover all members of Russia's parliament, senior military leaders and 4 more financial institutions.
We must ensure there is a cost for this violent, unacceptable and egregious behaviour. There must be a cost.
Economic weapons, but no military involvement.
That's not under contemplation by Australia, never has been, never been requested.
Labor leader Anthony Albanese calling it a shameful act of aggression and a grave moment for humanity.
This is full-on war.
Security analyst Malcolm Davis says Australia should sever all trade with Russia, but agrees sending in troops isn't an option.
We are not going to deliberately go into essentially what would be a third world war.
Unpredictable, nuclear armed, a bully. Vladimir Putin's gambling on the West doing all it can to avoid the human cost of another world war as his invasion extracts a financial cost, smashing our stock market. The ASX 200 plummeting almost 3%, down 207 points, falling below the 7,000 mark, wiping about $70 billion from the value of stocks in just a few hours. Analysts warning against panic.
I don't think it's time to panic, no. We might yet see further falls. Nobody knows what the short-term future brings. In the long term, I expect the market to keep its march higher.
As stocks dive, the price of petrol soars.
Unfortunately, pretty much every town and centre across the country are paying prices that we have never paid for before.
Regular unleaded as high as $2.06 a litre in Melbourne and going above $2 in most cities except Brisbane. Russia supplies 12% of the world's oil, but US President Joe Biden has promised to increase America's production to cover any supply dip forced by the conflict.
We don't believe that we're going to hit $2.50 a litre.
The cost of aggression.
This is a chilling reminder of the world that we live in.
A world now on edge. Mark Riley, 7 News.
Victorians are being warned food prices are set to follow the rising cost of petrol and gas. Both Coles and Woolworths say customers can soon expect to pay up to 3% more for their groceries.
And it's not only in prices on our shelves, everything is going up at the moment.
The cost of those transportation goes up, so food prices could lift also.
Petrol has already risen to just under $2.06 a litre, with experts warning that could rise a further 50 cents because of the Ukraine crisis and global inflation pressures. Thousands of tradies are in limbo tonight after construction giant ProBuild went into administration. It's left towers and apartment blocks unfinished across the city as the industry faces tough times.
Tradies on the job early, but they're not here to work. Instead, collecting tools before this ProBuild site on Elizabeth Street is abandoned.
Got told, pack up your tools, we're done here. ProBuild's gone bust.
35 years of Australian building history into administration with almost zero notice. ProBuild's parent company in South Africa claims Australia's border restrictions, snap lockdowns and mandatory work from home regulations had a considerable impact on property markets. Others point to surging costs of labour and supplies.
There is a real concern. ProBuild really could just be the first major contractor, but contractors generally speaking are under significant pressure.
There were signs of trouble, ProBuild's Australian revenue dropping from $2.4 billion to $1.6 billion. Their Perth office shut down a year ago, but some staff are still waiting for redundancy payouts. Administrators say our immediate focus to undertake an urgent assessment of financial positions and work to stabilise the business and projects. They include pharmaceutical giant CSL's new city headquarters, more than 400 apartments in Caulfield, plus hotels and apartments in Sydney and Brisbane. Westside Place Stage 1 on Spencer Street is one of ProBuild's final completed projects. The company has indicated it will fight to stay alive in Australia, claiming it has several options to raise enough capital to remain a prominent builder. Did you have any heads up that ProBuild was going under?
Not really, not much, no.
When did you find out?
Yesterday.
Thousands of contractors and tradies unsure what's next.
Tip into our annual leave and that sort of thing, and a lot of that's been exhausted from COVID the last couple of years.
1/3 of construction and building insolvencies last year were in Victoria. New South Wales was slightly worse.
We can only recover and rebuild as a state with policy certainty.
The state government is open to discussing support.
Noting that it's a for-profit private company, we're always happy to try and provide support, and that can take many different forms.
There is genuine concern in the industry that ProBuild will not be the last construction company to go under. It currently has $5 billion of unfinished projects. The Master Builders Association says these companies on these big jobs, in some cases, signed the contracts years ago, now unable to renegotiate price despite an explosion in cost of staff and supplies and a shortage of both. Peter?
Blake Johnson at North Melbourne, thank you. Victoria's police force is scrambling to swear in 1,000 officers who've been working illegally for up to 8 years. An administrative bungle means they weren't properly authorised, putting prosecutions under a cloud.
A ceremony 8 years overdue.
I will, to the best of my skill and knowledge, discharge all the duties legally imposed.
Senior police today rushing to swear in hundreds of officers who've been working illegally due to
an administrative oversight
caused by legislation changes in 2014. 1,076 police officers, 157 PSOs and 29 police custody officers were sworn in by acting assistant commissioners who didn't have valid powers. The police have been carrying guns and arresting people without authority.
They have the support of Victoria Police, they have the support of the government, they've acted in good faith, there is going to be no detriment to them whatsoever.
Right now, anyone who's been tasered, anyone who's been pepper sprayed, anyone who's had force used on them by those officers, that force is unlawful and potentially those people could challenge it.
Some defendants are already seeking urgent legal advice.
In this in-between period, you potentially have people who have been imprisoned unlawfully and could be making urgent applications to the court to be released.
The Chief Commissioner doesn't know how many cases are affected.
We don't even have a ballpark figure.
But he insists no criminals will escape justice, with legislation to rectify the error set to be introduced in Parliament in the next sitting week.
The advice that I have is that if we do this, it's passed and it's done retrospectively, it won't undermine any criminal or other actions undertaken by these police officers.
Once the retrospective legislation is in, it will validate everything.
Critics are now asking why the force has taken so long to act when the issue was first raised in February last year.
It's the worst way to have handled it, because what they've done is they've seen a problem and they've sat on their hands about it and made that problem 10 times worse.
Cassie Zervos, 7 News.
A detective has apologised to former AFL coach Danny Laidley over his involvement in a leaked mugshot scandal. But the policeman insists while his actions were ignorant, they were not illegal.
Danny Laidley now lives her life proudly.
Representing 2 tribes, obviously transgender tribe and North on the back.
But the former Kangaroos coach wasn't allowed to come out on her own terms. Police members leaked photos of her when she was arrested and taken into custody in May 2020, before she'd made her transition public. Today, a court heard officers in a group chat called the Gentlemen's Club began panicking after the images they'd been sending each other went viral online. Detective Murray Gentner telling an internal investigation, at that stage it was pretty serious. It was dawning on everyone what was happening. Detective Gentner is accused of sharing a mugshot of Ms Laidley to the group chat and making derogatory comments about her appearance. When asked if he'd arrested Laidley, the detective replied, "I didn't, but he's now a tranny and he's cooked. He's on the ice bad." Detective Gentner denies accessing the Victoria Police database to obtain Miss Laidley's mugshot. He insists he found it on social media after the photo went viral. Gentner's legal team says their client has no case to answer. The matter returns to court tomorrow. Estelle Greeping, 7 News.
School children are caught in the middle of an ugly feud between the state and federal government. It follows a backlash over the decision to force some students to keep wearing masks next week.
When the Federal Health Minister suggested
the fastest way out is to have a school-based vaccination program,
the Premier hit back.
We've got arrangements in schools. We've run vax hubs and pop-ups in schools. I got a WhatsApp message from the Prime Minister like the day after I made those announcements saying it was one of the best things he'd ever heard. It was terrific. Well done. Well done.
And didn't hold back.
I got the Prime Minister saying it's the greatest thing we've ever done, and I got Greg Hunt out there, and frankly, Victorians don't take orders from Greg Hunt, the bloke who forgot to place an order for vaccines. Like, seriously.
First dose vaccine rate in Victorian children aged 5 to 11 is above the national average, now at 54.6%.
That initial surge, really fantastic, strong surge of 5 to 11-year-olds getting vaccinated, slowed substantially when school went back. So we're still some way from being where we want to be.
Of the 6,715 cases recorded today, more than 1,300 are students and 122 are teachers. The Health Minister says he's reviewing mask rules for primary school students every day and considering a range of factors, including the second dose rate for 5 to 11-year-olds, which currently sits at less than 1%.
I would be much happier to relax the face mask rules in schools if the federal government allowed at-risk people to get a 4th dose.
Chanel Vella, 7 News.
Australian cricket legend Rod Marsh is in a critical condition in hospital tonight after suffering a massive heart attack in Queensland. Andrew McCormack has the latest, and Andrew, the cricket world is in shock.
Well, Mitch, Marsh is tonight fighting for life in a Bundaberg hospital after suffering a heart attack this morning, just minutes after landing in Queensland. A number of Aussie cricket's biggest names were gathering in Bundaberg for a past players event. Alan Border and Darren Lehman, just some of those heading to hospital after hearing the news. It's understood Marsh's heart stopped for several minutes. He was in a car going from the airport to his hotel when he suffered a suspected massive heart attack. The quick thinking of a pair of Queensland cricket officials got him to the hospital as soon as possible. That gave him some chance, and doctors in the emergency room then helped keep the 74-year-old alive. It's unknown if Marsh will stay in Bundaberg or be transferred to the likes of Brisbane for more treatment. He remains in Bundaberg in a critical condition. The thoughts, of course, of not just the Aussie cricket world, but the cricket world as a whole, with him, his wife Roz and his family at this time, Mitch.
Yes, of course, indeed. Andrew McCormack, thank you. Carlton has had its first taste of success under Michael Voss, but, Tim Watson, it wasn't all good news for the Blues.
No, it wasn't, Mitch. Charlie Curnow has been sent for scans with more injury concerns looming. We'll get the latest on the Blues star shortly as a big-name recruit gets Carlton hearts racing at Princes Park. Also coming up, the D's dynamic duo as dangerous as ever as the reigning premiers pick up from where they left off. But there is a fresh injury concern for a D's premiership star. And there are calls tonight too to suspend a tennis star after a shocking attack on a chair umpire. That's ahead in sport, Mitch.
OK, we'll see you then. Thank you, Tim. Coming up next, firebugs are causing havoc in suburbs from Patterson Lakes to Pakenham. The bungling arsonists are wanted over 3 fire attacks, $4 million in damage, and they've even set fire to themselves twice. Also coming up, what was behind a police chase in Melbourne's West? Clive Palmer rushed to hospital by ambulance. The last chance for tickets in tonight's $120 million Powerball draw. And Victoria's stamp duty sting hitting home buyers harder than anywhere else in Australia. A driver has rammed a police car during a pursuit in Melbourne's West. Police tried to intercept the alleged stolen car at Truganina today. Officers smashed a window and used capsicum spray on the driver, but they drove off after hitting the police vehicle and are yet to be caught. Detectives are hunting a gang of clumsy firebugs targeting shops across Melbourne. They've already caused $4 million worth of damage, while twice accidentally setting themselves on fire.
Bumbling arsonists doing almost as much damage to themselves as property they set out to destroy.
It's terrible. I feel sorry for the shopkeepers.
Police now suspect these 3 targeted attacks on tobacco stores across Melbourne are linked to the same crime gang.
It sounds like it's a bit more organised than just a random, doesn't it?
They first struck inside a Pakenham shopping centre last August. Again, 6 days later on Station Street at Deer Park, where an offender accidentally set themselves alight. Then, 6 months on, a third attack on this tobacconist in Patterson Lakes. A clumsy offender catching fire again. Detectives say the gang has caused at least $4 million damage.
The person who done it should be up to pay for it.
The arsonists use accelerant on each occasion. They also use getaway cars. At Deer Park, the offenders were seen getting out of a light-coloured SUV. Another light-coloured car, thought to be a Holden Astra, appeared to be keeping lookout. That car was driven by this woman. Police now hope to identify. Physical injuries will be key to identifying these arsonists. CCTV shows they caught alight during the attacks. Police believe those involved will have suffered serious burns. Jodie Lee, 7 News.
Billionaire Clive Palmer has been taken to hospital in an ambulance. The mining magnate was said to be suffering COVID-like symptoms when paramedics were called to his Gold Coast home this morning. A spokesperson said the unvaccinated 67-year-old was transported to hospital for a COVID test. One lucky Australian could tonight become $120 million richer. The second highest Powerball jackpot is up for grabs in just a couple of hours. Christy Cooper is live in Ashburton this evening, and Christy, there's still plenty of people out buying tickets.
Mitch, every second person in Australia over the age of 18 has either bought tickets or is about to, in this jackpot being drawn in just 2.5 hours. If there's just one Division 1 winner tonight, that person will become the country's biggest ever lottery winner. Newsagents have been inundated today, many people leaving it to the last minute for their chance to dream.
We definitely encourage all players to get in early and also to register their entries when they do purchase those tickets, because if they do and they win Division 1, then I will be able to call them directly after the draw with that exciting news.
If you're looking for a lucky suburb to purchase your ticket tonight, Altona North, Sunbury and Melbourne CBD have all had 3 Division 1 winners in the last year. I'm hoping it's Ashburton's turn, Mitch.
Christy Cooper, thank you and good luck to all. Jane Bunn joins us now. Jane, temperatures have dropped, but the humidity has not.
It has not indeed. Today was nearly 10 degrees cooler than yesterday, but that high humidity has remained. That brought a warm night. We finally dropped to 20 in the city, but the humid air made it feel several degrees warmer. Then it left us with foggy low cloud for the morning before sunshine returned, but it's still a bit hazy out there. Storms are bringing heavy rain to our north and also east. Now I'll show you when it is Melbourne's turn for these after sport, Mitch.
See you then. Thank you, Jane. There's been a shocking find as police arrested a driver over a road rage run-in with scooter riders. Details are live next on 7 News. Also, Qantas's massive hit, the new plan to recover. Tragedy as Queensland is swamped with 2 months' rain in a day. Style queens Mary and Kate in a royal reunion as the Queen battles COVID. And the one-of-a-kind Holden going under the hammer. Former fugitive Graham Potter wants to be placed in protective custody following his high-profile arrest. Potter arrived in Melbourne from Queensland last night after 12 years on the run. He faced court charged with conspiracy to murder, drug trafficking and failing to answer bail. He will return to court in May. Qantas has blamed COVID for another billion-dollar loss. The airline has notched up its 4th consecutive half-year loss, citing lockdowns, the WA border closure and Omicron. It says the variant has cost the company $650 million.
It has been honestly a real roller coaster ride. We're probably the company that's been most impacted by COVID in Australia.
Qantas is hopeful the turbulence is about to end and it's offering employees free shares. A man's behind bars after a scooter rage attack on St Kilda Road. Emma O'Sullivan joins us now, and Emma, police have raided his home.
Mitch, officers got more than they bargained for when they searched the man's house, allegedly finding explosive, drugs and ammunition. They were there to arrest Michael Gorey over this incident on February 13. A yellow car can be seen repeatedly driving towards scooter riders. Police say they seized that car at Mr Gorey's Craigieburn home, also finding cannabis and a homemade explosive device. The 32-year-old faces 10 charges, including reckless conduct and unlicensed driving. He didn't apply for bail and will be back in court next month.
Emma O'Sullivan in the newsroom, thank you. The death toll from southeast Queensland's flood disaster has risen following the discovery of a motorcyclist's body near Gympie. Some areas have recorded more than 2 months' rain in a day. The region is bracing for another deluge with a severe weather warning stretching south beyond the Gold Coast. There's a promising sign the Queen is on the mend as she battles COVID. Her Majesty was able to keep a weekly phone appointment with Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The palace has previously said the 95-year-old intended to perform light duties as she recovered from cold-like symptoms. The Queen did cancel an in-person audience, even though Britain lifted COVID isolation rules today. The Duchess of Cambridge has joined Crown Princess Mary for a royal commemoration in Copenhagen. The stylish pair joined forces to celebrate the Danish Queen's Golden Jubilee.
Born at opposite ends of the planet, two future queens stroll across Copenhagen's Amalienborg Palace Square. The Duchess of Cambridge and Tasmania's own Crown Princess Mary of Denmark. They have met before. Both once commoners, together they are the future of European royalty.
They both look very beautiful. They're both very strong and inspirational women.
We are proud to show her Copenhagen, so I think it's very nice.
Kate and Mary joined Danish Queen Margrethe, celebrating 50 years on the throne this year, her Golden Jubilee. The Duchess's two-day tour of Denmark focusing on domestic violence awareness and children. Kate's early childhood education campaign has gone global. She is having an impact. I love you, Kate said, before the kids taught her a thing or two about surviving in the Danish woods. The Duchess trying her hand at almost anything on this trip. Before a final farewell to her friend Mary. They'll no doubt meet again. Hugh Whitfield, 7 News.
An important piece of Australian motoring history is up for auction in Melbourne. The 40-year-old Holden Commodore prototype was found in a garage in country Victoria.
At a glance, this might look like any old Holden Commodore, but a closer look reveals it's one of a kind.
It's one of the rarest barn finds ever to be surfaced here in Australia.
It's being described as an ultimate survivor, built as a prototype for the SLE Commodore in 1979, the only one in existence.
This was built before the VH SLE came out, and you can actually see by inspecting the vehicle there's parts that are in there, such as the radio, that aren't actually real. If you took it out, it's just a mock-up.
It was recently discovered hidden in a garage underneath a dust sheet in country Victoria in near perfect condition. The front grille is hand carved from wood. There are even pieces of modelling clay still sitting in the boot.
And they've been left here since the vehicle was created nearly 40 years ago.
Catching the attention of motoring enthusiasts around Australia.
I love the history and the provenance of it more than the car itself, I think.
Test drives are definitely out of the question. While its engine is believed to be fully functional, this car has never been started before, let alone driven.
I think the minute it's driven, it's ruined.
It'll go under the hammer this Saturday at Lloyd's Auctions and is expected to sell for well into six figures. Christy Cooper, 7 News.
Quite remarkable. The Ukraine conflict is fast moving with new developments as explosions rock cities across the country. We'll cross back to our reporter in Lviv for the very latest next. Also, Victoria's stamp duty sting is having a big impact. Details are coming up too. And the push to pay our teachers an extra $30,000 a year. We're just over 3 hours into Russia's attack on Ukraine. These pictures are just in, showing a missile hitting an airport believed to be in western Ukraine. Russian war jets are launching airstrikes on cities and military facilities across the country. Jeff Parry is on the ground in Lviv, and Jeff, millions of citizens are coming to grips with these attacks.
Yes, they are, and you can understand why they're nervous, Mitch. That missile strike, I can confirm, is in the west. It's an airport about 100 kilometres south of Lviv where we are, and so, you know, people some people are trying to flee. We've seen long lines of vehicles trying to get out of Kiev, lining up to get petrol, and roads west of here, the Polish border is west of here, roads across the country, particularly that one we understand is at a standstill, but plenty of people on the move. The air raid sirens have been sounding here in Lviv. It's pretty clear that Mr. Putin wants all of Ukraine. Mitch?
Parry in Lviv, thank you. Back home, Victorian home buyers face the highest stamp duty fees in the nation, and it's unlikely to change anytime soon. New data shows the crippling costs have contributed to an exodus interstate, where it's much cheaper.
This riverside mansion in Ivanhoe is what real estate dreams are made of.
I think the only other place you could buy this house might be in Toorak, but it would be probably 5 times the price.
With an asking price of $10.5 to $11.5 million, the lucky buyer will have a hefty tax bill. The stamp duty will be at least $700,000, more than the median house price in Adelaide or Hobart. The Housing Industry Association's Stamp Duty Watch report found Victoria tops the list.
We know that 94% of households aspire to home ownership, but less than half of them think they will ever achieve that goal. And that is because up to 50% of the cost of a house and land package is taxes, fees and charges.
On median property prices, Victorians fork out more than $40,000. In New South Wales, it's $34,000. And in Queensland, the average buyer pays $11,000. Concessions are available for first home buyers if they buy for less than $750,000.
Now, there are fewer and fewer of those properties available on the market, and many first home buyers are looking above that threshold, so they're not getting those benefits.
Population data shows over 2020, 26,000 Melburnians packed up and left, with Queensland the most popular destination for an interstate move.
Certainly what we're seeing over the past 2 years is that those states with low stamp duty have attracted more workers.
Emma O'Sullivan, 7 News.
There's a call for teachers to receive better pay after a leaked federal government report. It revealed top teachers need to be paid $30,000 more to keep them in the profession.
We're getting far too many people leak out of the workforce. We're actually in the country starting to get to a point where we could run out of teachers. So that's what this is trying to address.
Classroom teachers earn, at best, around $100,000 a year. Sport is next with Tim Watson, and Tim, Carlton fans have their hearts in their mouths again tonight.
They do, Mitch. We'll get the latest on a new injury scare for Charlie Curnow next as the skipper regains his spark in Michael Voss's first game in charge. Plus a Demons demolition to start their premiership defence, but not without some injury concerns of their own. The Bombers celebrating a heartwarming father-son moment, and Ash Barty's plans post-Oz Open glory as a sorry German faces up to his Mexico meltdown. Welcome back. Carlton is hopeful a fresh knee injury concern for Charlie Curnow won't rule him out for round one. Curnow's scare was the only negative on an otherwise successful start for Michael Voss.
Curnow suffered the scare with less than 5 minutes left in this marking contest with Josh Battle, the forward running straight off and having treatment on the bench.
Yeah, it's fine. Like heavy knock, but at that stage of the game, at this point in the preparation, we're not going to take any risk with him.
But 7 News has been told Curnow's jarred it, is icing it tonight. Optimistic at this stage, it's nothing serious. The Blues clearly cautious. The luckless Curnow missed more than 760 consecutive days of footy, with at least 4 serious knee injuries in the last 3 years. It was down to work for both teams at Icon Park, and noticeably leaner Patrick Cripps, the standout best on ground.
Oh, definitely. I think it's, as the captain, you know, he wants to have influence on the group, and the way he's carrying himself off the field as well as on is providing a great example.
New recruit Adam Chera also providing a huge positive for Blues fans. And in one of the matchups of the future, Max King and Jacob Wiedering enjoyed an even battle. A tight 7-point win, an early tick for Carlton's new game plan off half-back.
Us being dynamic off the half-back line with our personnel is certainly going to be a character trait of the way we play.
And Tim, with COVID, it's been 2 years in the making tonight. An emotional night for the Essendon Football Club. Gavin Wanganeen, Dustin Fletcher, Bruce Reid, and an emotional one, Neil Danaher, elevated as legends. Joining you tonight, Tim, as legends in the Essendon Hall of Fame. A big 24 hours for Gavin Wanganeen. In particular, his son Tex elevated to Essendon's senior list.
Yeah, it was. I'm still on cloud nine. Being there and getting the news from Tex that the club have signed him, and it's his boyhood dream. It's become a reality for him, and he's come from a long way back because he missed footy over the last 2 years with COVID and a stress fracture. Believe in yourself. Yeah.
And Tim, just finally, the Eagles board, including Justin Langer, who's on the board, met last night. At the top of the agenda, Jack Darling's vaccination status. Now, the board hasn't made a decision yet. They're reluctant to make a decision on this sensitive vaccination issue. They want to leave it, I'm told, to Adam Simpson and the CEO Trevor Nisbet. At this stage, there's no indication at all that Darling has complied with the vaccination requirements of the AFL. Tim?
Thanks, Tom. Melbourne has dismissed any concerns of a premiership hangover with a 14-goal thumping of the Kangaroos. Ben Brown hit the ground running with a bag up forward, but there are injury concerns for both clubs.
The party rolls on for the reigning premiers, seen scarily similar to last September in an 88-point thumping of North Melbourne.
And can he get a lick of the ice cream? He certainly can.
It's grand final day again.
Not even a dislocated finger for Clayton Oliver enough to spoil a big day out.
We really wanted to come out in our first practice match of the year and play the same kind of way that we had at the end of 2021.
An injury-free Ben Brown with a 5-goal reminder for his former club.
Probably the fittest I've been, the best my body's felt, so it's exciting what can come from here.
More midfield time for a tough Cozzy Pickett. Jake Lever rested with a bruised calf, while defender Adam Tomlinson passed his return from an ACL last May with flying colours. Christian Salem avoiding damage to his knee. Roos Ruck recruit Callum Coleman-Jones landed awkwardly and suffered a suspected knee injury, adding further pain to a day his side kicked just 6 majors.
That's not what we expect at the moment as a footy club. The fans shouldn't expect that. We're really disappointed what we put up today.
There was one shining light for the Roos, a crunching tackle from number 1 pick Jason Horne-Francis, signalling he's ready for a round 1 debut. Mitch Cleary, 7 News.
There are calls for German Alexander Zverev to be banned for months after a shocking act of umpire abuse. The world number 3 has apologised for lashing out at the chair umpire in a doubles match in Mexico. He's since been kicked out of the tournament. And back home, Ash Barty hit the courts at Kooyong. The world number 1 plans to head to Indian Wells next after celebrating her Oz Open title.
It's been quiet, I tell you what. I was on house arrest for a couple of weeks. I was moving houses, so I was unpacking boxes and settling into our new home.
Barty teamed up with surfing champ Steph Gilmore as part of a health and wellbeing program. Western United is back on top of the A-League table after a 1-0 win over Sydney FC. Overseas, teenager Anthony Elanga got Manchester United out of jail with a late Champions League equaliser against Atletico Madrid. And in the Premier League, Liverpool smashed Leeds 6-0. Long spells for Zverev, do you think?
I think so, Tim. Well, he's got to be a long stint on the sidelines for that sort of stuff.
12 months? What would you think?
I'd be leaning towards 12.
Give him a year.
Give him a long time to have a think about that sort of stuff.
Good on you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Jane is next with the forecast. And Jane, what can we expect to end the week?
Well, Mitch, the high humidity remains, but there's no wet weather. Then the weekend is looking great. The details are next.
Hello, Ukraine wakes up to war. Tonight, the invasion is changing by the minute. We're across every development this evening. Live coverage from our teams on the ground. Explosions rocking major cities and missiles launched and counterstrikes expected. Hope you can join me for regular breaking developments as they happen tonight. Full coverage, of course, the latest from 7 News at 11.
Hello again. Temperatures aren't very high, but the humidity is, and it'll remain humid through the weekend and early next week. With moisture in the air can't cool down at night. Our low was 20 this morning, and it felt a few degrees warmer than that. But a trough has moved through the Melbourne area, so we're in a southerly wind and only climbed to 23. With that trough through, there are no storms in the Melbourne area. There are to our north and also east, and they won't come here. We're all dry tonight and remaining humid. However, there are plenty of storms in northern and eastern Victoria. They are slow moving. They bring heavy rain, which is packing a punch. Now, this is what they look like. If you are directly under the storm, the rain is torrential. But just next door, there is bright sunshine. One storm in the Mallee this afternoon brought 36 millimetres in a short time, turning dirt into lakes. Any thunderstorm can bring heavy rain. Make sure your property is ready, as this activity does continue in Victoria for many days. A high pushes moist air into the eastern states. A trough turns that into thunderstorms. There is a second trough running down through here, the east coast. That one has the heaviest rain in southeast Queensland and northeast New South Wales. A cold front passing to our south pushed our trough into eastern parts of Victoria, but it'll gradually move back again over the weekend. So the storms, they'll gradually ease after sunset. The sun is their energy. They'll ramp back up again by tomorrow afternoon, but only in these eastern parts. The trough moves backwards on Saturday, so the storms come with it, spreading back into similar areas that saw them today, possibly Melbourne's outer northeast. Around the nation tomorrow, Brisbane likely to see more than 100 millimetres, but Sydney and Canberra have up to 20 millimetres. In Hobart, early drizzle, then cloudy, generally sunny for Adelaide and Perth. To Victoria, east of Shepparton to Traralgon, the risk of showers and thunderstorms tending to persistent rain in East Gippsland. Cloud coming in across the rest of the south in humid southeasterly winds. It's mostly sunny in the northwest. Closer in, the morning looks generally cloudy. The afternoon, a mix of sun and cloud. There's no wet weather, but we are still humid. The city peaks at 23 with a cloudy morning before it turns sunny. The breeze will offset the muggy feeling. To the 8-day outlook, and the weekend is great if you like humid sunshine. Heading to 27 on Saturday, then I think 28 on Sunday. So we're generally sunny across the weekend. There is the very slight risk of an afternoon thunderstorm in outer northeastern suburbs. I would suggest most will stay dry. On Monday, that's when the wet weather comes back. The trough intensifies. So Monday and Tuesday, we have the potential for some heavy falls here in the Melbourne area. Another storm potentially on Wednesday afternoon, then it heats up to end next week. So we are humid, a top of 23 for tomorrow. Cloudy morning before it gradually turns sunny during the afternoon, and we're all dry tomorrow and for much of the weekend too, Mitch.
Officially the last few days of summer.
That it is.
OK, thank you very much, Jane. And that's the way it is this Thursday, the 24th of February. Thanks for your company. For now, from the 7 News team, good night.